The buildings are conceived, designed, and built in India. He facilitated India stands tall in the global green building movement and aspired from India to be Jagat Guru in sustainable built environment. With the vision that every Indian contributes 1 square feet of green to their motherland. So Prem Jain Memorial Trust has been involved in number of activities, and the prime focus has always been green education for students, be it for holding bi-monthly lectures for students through Living Building series and Prem Jain colloquium series through eminent industry speakers, session-wise video recording of which are available at PGMT website for students. The trust is also involved in supporting unsung, unrecognized young bright talent in school and colleges with support and intervention initiatives. Trust continues to promote green innovation, technologies, and celebrating achievement of technologists dedicated to promote sustainability. PGMT extends their gratitude to IGBC and IGBC student chapter, Sustain and Save, respective institutions and faculty members. So you can tag us at on Instagram at Prem Jain Memorial Trust, PGMT, WGBW 2020, and Act on Climate. Now, I would like to welcome Ms. Payal Jain, who is a trustee of PGMT, and Ms. Payal is a graduate from FIDM, California, and she returned home in the early 90s to start a career in fashion. And now she is one of the leading designers in the country. Payal ma'am, it's an honor to have you here, and we would like to request you to introduce us to the trust.
Thank you very much, Palak. Thank you. I just want to welcome everybody here. Welcome to the PJMT World Green Building Week 2020. Sorry, I'll switch on my video. Thank you, Sheetal. Thank you for being here. We are very happy to have all of you here, students, faculty, our special guest speakers. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Prem Jain Memorial Trust. It was founded a few years ago in the memory of my dearest father, Dr. Prem Jain. And its mission is to carry on the love he had for Mother Nature and his lifelong commitment to creating a greener earth. He had a very special connection with students of all ages and believed through his life that sustainability must become something that each one of us live by, a way of life. And it starts at an early age for it really to bring change to our beautiful planet. When he returned to India in the 70s after his education, he became a silent crusader in green for his beloved Janani Janmabhoomi, as he called it. And that time, green to most of us was simply a color. He's also fondly known by his students and his peers as the father of green building movement in India. He was instrumental in creating a green Bharat, and his vision was that India becomes a global leader in green buildings. At that time, the population of India was 1 billion, and his vision was to have 1 square foot per Indian as being green. Today, we are at however many millions, and we have a long ways to go. For those of us who didn't know him, I'd like to share that he was somebody who lived on the path of dharma, justice, integrity, truth, and humility. Everything he did was with purpose and intention, commitment, dedication, kindness, compassion, and love. He made every one of us feel special. And besides me, there must be another million people on the planet who feel that he was their father. Every life that he touched, people who he was attached to, people that he worked with, his students, everybody connected with him on a personal level. He lived with the greatest pride for his mother and his motherland, both of which he worshipped. His lifelong commitment can best be expressed in the words of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free and where words come from the depths of truth, where the mind is led forward into the heaven of freedom, my father, let my country awake. Dr. Jain took over chairmanship of Indian Green Building Council in 2007 and set his sights on achieving 1 billion square feet of green by 2012. But this benchmark of 1 billion square feet was completed by 2011. And then he set the next benchmark of 2 billion square feet, which too was achieved by 2014. By 2018, IGBC had hit 5.7 billion square feet, and the story goes on and on and on. The Indian Green Building Council, part of Confederation of Indian Industries, was formed in the year 2001 with a vision to enable a sustainable built environment for all and facilitate India to be one of the global leaders in the sustainable built environment by 2025. The first project Dr. Jain and the illustrious Spectral team designed was Godrej Green Building Center way back in 2003, which eventually got the highest LEED Platinum rating at that point and became the world's greenest building in 2004. That's when his love affair with IGBC started. And then came 60 Platinum, 40 Gold, and many, many, many more awards to India. Today, I'm very pleased and honored to have IGBC as our partner. I would also like to thank Sustain and Save, Axis Institute of Technology and Management, Sheetal Rakheja for being here and for inspiring these students, Sandeep Narang for whose brainchild this was, and thanks to him, we are doing a whole week of celebration. Dr. Hariharan, who sowed the seed of web sessions during lockdown, and thanks to him, we've come a long ways in 5 months. The entire board of governors and trustees of PJMT and the secretariat team who's actually making this whole week happen. Thank you to each one of you. I'm most grateful. And now I pass it to, I'm here to welcome Sheetal, and I pass the baton back. Thank you.
Yeah, we would like to, hello, we would like to introduce Mr. Dr. Ashish Malik.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, please go on.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Access Colleges, I, Dr. Ashish Malik, Director Access Colleges, welcome Ms. Payal Jain, Founder PGMT, Mr. Sandeep Narangji, our mentor, all dignitaries and participants present today for PGMT Green Building Week, first day, second session of Ms. Sheetal Rakheja. Before proceeding ahead, I may enlighten you about Access Colleges. Access Colleges was established in the year 2010 by starting 6 different colleges of engineering, management, fashion, and architecture. Our chairman, Mr. Raj Kushwaha, sets his mission of let's educate the world with the motto of tomorrow's first. To move forward with this mission, his aim of tomorrow's first, we have taken a small step by associating our students with the CII IGBC movement of Sustainable India. Sustainability is the present time need, as every project set up in the present or future will be planned keeping zero waste in mind. The waste would be anything like water, material, electricity, etc. India's sustainable development plan will not be achieved through an IITs, NITs, or Tier 1 colleges. In real sense, it will be achieved through pass out engineers or architects of Tier 2 colleges. Keeping this in mind, Access College started this Access CII IGBC student chapter under the leadership of architecture Palak Patel. Access believes in the students' innovative mind power, and that is why we promote their ideas up to end stage of protection. Access work for the solution of problems which affect our rural village people or the common man. We are soon starting 3 startups for the patent products for common people. One product is the water purification for rural village people having cost of 3,000 only. Another product is for the housewives for this exercise needs at home itself, called hybrid electric treadmill scooter, in which they can exercise as well as they can travel from one distance to another distance with the power of electric battery. And third one is the IoT based irrigation system powered by solar power. Keeping this good work movement in another dimensions gives strength us to move ahead in sustainable built environment creation. That is why we are keenly interested to work for green buildings and equip our students for its skill. I thank Mr. Sandeep Narangji, whose regular guidance help us to move ahead in our mission. Today we are associated with Prem Jain Memorial Trust, through him, and happy to share that we are offered MOU by Prem Jain Memorial Trust for its mission partner. Now I welcome today's speaker, Ms. Sheetal Rakhija, who is a well-known name in itself in the field of green interior and zero energy. Hello. Mr. Sheetal Rakhija is managing partner at Eon Design and Development LLP, which is a leading architecture and interior design firm based in Noida. Sheetal designed for Wipro campus, Patni campus, and Green Boulevard achieved LEED's highest platinum rating. These are the few basic major achievements, but her major achievement is the Shunya's India's first net zero energy home. It is one of her research development project made completely out of waste. Her project sets a benchmark in energy efficiency in the industry. So I welcome Ms. Sheetal Rakhija and pass on the session to Ms. Sheetal Rakhija. Please, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to share my experience over the last 21 years that I've been practicing. And thank you, Payal. Thank you, everyone here, for introducing me. I would just like to share a few things of Dr. Jain because I had the privilege of working with him on these projects, Shunya and then Green Boulevard. And I felt that he was one of the very encouraging and innovative people. I do remember that, he would, there were some very out of the box ideas which he would always push. And I felt because I was at that time when these projects were going on, it was very start of my career. And he would always encourage. I remember once, I think I was just 4 or 5 years into architectural experience, and I was sitting in front of the client trying to convince him. And the client thought that, because of just 5 years down the line, what would she really know? So Dr. Jain really backed me up, and at that time convinced the client to go for that particular design. And when it got finished, it took 2.5 years to get completed that project. It was, it came out in the magazines and it was like really appreciated. At that time, I went and I thanked him. And then he said, he was so humble. He said, why are you thanking me? It's your design. I just pushed it. While I remember, pushed the entire thing, helped me design the MEP systems and the energy systems in a way that really helped us to achieve those things. So that was the greatness of and humility of Dr. Jain. And we still remember him. He also encouraged me to get into IGBC. He pushed me to get here, always encouraged. So he was like a father to me, who through and through, he's been an integral part of my career and my, whatever I've done till now. So with that, I'd like to just share my journey from energy efficient buildings, because he and my husband, Ashish, who was working with Dr. Jain, kind of helped us pave the way right from energy efficient buildings to Shunya. And that is a journey I would like to share with you all.
Yeah, this is good, Sheetalji.
Yes, so everyone can see my screen, right? Okay, so I've been into practice for now 21 years and designed many buildings. Most of them that you see here are very energy efficient buildings. And over the last 5 years, I think starting with the Shunya, which was 8 years back, which was a research and development project for us, we came a long way after that, experimenting with Shunya and taking that information, that knowledge and improvements on that to buildings that we are designing today, which are net positive. Like we just finished a club, in NCR, which is a zero energy club, which actually functions in the evening, but kind of stores all the energy from the sun during the day. And then there's an office that we are designing, which is again a net positive office in Calcutta. And there are many others on the drawing board. So few got completed and few are on way, which are now net more positive. because our endeavor as a group has always been, to push the boundaries, and we feel that, sustainability is the key core. We will all survive. Looking at, what we face today in terms of energy shortages, materials shortages, floods, and you talk about it. So our footprint has to be the bare minimum. And not only that, we owe to our Mother Earth to give back more to it than what we have taken from it. So the entire concept of Shunya would be that, it's all zero water, zero waste, and zero energy. So for that, the entire thing has been done. That's our own office, and why I bring it here on the table is that, we wanted to walk the talk. So our own office, you see there's no light on during the day. These are very, very simple measures which we all as architects, interior designers, and why even that, even, simple owners of offices and houses, we can take to ensure that, we tap into the natural resources as less as possible. And our country has so much of abundant sunlight that you really don't need any electricity. So you see there's no light which is on throughout the day. We work on with fans on, and our air conditioning also is, we run at 26 degrees. Even in peak of June, you will see. And we run the air conditioning only for the 3 months in the year. Rest of the time, we really don't need it. So tapping into the resources as less as possible. We monitor how much electricity we are consuming. We know that, we monitor it so extensively that we know which particular light is actually or area which is consuming, so that we can address those issues. We are based right in the center of Noida. And when the PM 2.5 levels are touching skyrocketing like 300, 400, at that time we are maintaining less than 20. So kind of filtering all of that. And all the furniture and materials that you see here is all reused. So again, the main thing being that tapping into the natural resources as less as possible. So where does the Shunya come from? There's a shlok which says that, whatever you do is not only for yourself. There's this selfishness which is never taught in our culture. It says Sarvesham Shanti Bhavatu, for the peace of everybody. Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu, Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu, for prosperity, for benefit of everybody. So whatever we do, you as students, when you go out tomorrow, whatever you design, it affects. We as architects, even, a simple thing that I design, goes through an entire process. Let's say, even if it's a table, it will require wood. That wood has to be harvested. It has to be, the trees have to be cut. The habitats have to be disturbed. So we are affecting, even a small thing kind of affects a big way to this environment. So that's why we have to be responsible. And whatever we design is not only for us, it is for the entire mankind, entire environment. And where does this Shunya come from? We all know that India gave Shunya to the world. It gave that word zero. But you really know where that gets derived from. So that Shunya is everything for us. If you look at our temples, how they are built, there is, you see the peak of the temple, the tip of the temple. That is where the cosmos and the earth come together. This is where the earth and the divine come together. That particular point is called Shunya, zero. But there's so much to that. It's not just zero. It doesn't mean nothing. It means nothingness. It means that everything is created from that and gets destroyed there. So that's the main principle of recycling. Of you take something, it should take no energy and it should get into that nothingness. So my understanding has been over the years that number one is sustainability. How do you define sustainability? It means that all scales for infrastructures and buildings, if something has to be sustainable, it is not just, it has to be energy efficient. It means it has to integrate and balance the ecological, social, and economic components of a community. So if you say that, something is, let's say, there's a component which is sustainable, it means it has considered ecological, social, and economic component. If I'm designing a house and I'm only considering that, there has to be a natural light which needs to come in for people, and then I put large windows, it will not be sustainable because you're getting in heat also, number one. You're putting in a window which has taken so much energy to get constructed there. So I need to balance all of that, right? So how do I balance that? There is light coming in. I'm making you understand in a simple terms. There is light coming in. but at the same time, you have to take out the heat. At the same time, you have to consider how you're making that glass. How much of glass are you wasting? Have you sized the glass in a way that there are no wastages? So these are simple terms, but I'll explain you over the examples how people have tried to balance all of these three components. Number two understanding is that our past, our heritage is very rich. The way we used to design earlier was far more sensitive to and considerate to the climate. Like you look at, let's say you go to Rajasthan, it's designed, most of the, the Havelis are designed around courtyards, because courtyard is not only fulfilling your environmental needs because it's shading the walls around, it's keeping the place cool, but it is also a social space for the people. People used to spend time there. So it has a multifunctional use. If you look at these gullies which were there, they were not only helping to protect from the sun, they were accelerating the wind, cooling it and accelerating the wind which was going there. Number three, it became a social space for the community itself. And then it would just, open out into a larger courtyard. So it is a very, huge knowledge that we have in our past, which we need to understand and take forward and not eat the West. Number three, what I've understood is that nature is a very powerful tool for building sustainable communities. There's so much learning in nature, how everything sits together. There is biodiversity, but then there's also a balance, which we need to take forward into our communities and societies and architecture that we build. Nature is very powerful. You know that it can, convert anything into very beautiful. It can uplift your spirit. You just go, you take holidays in nature, right? You want to be surrounded. You don't go to ugly places. You always go near nature because it helps to uplift one's spirit. But then why do we disassociate nature when we build? We make concrete jungles and we leave nature out. Is that the right way to build? So we have to start questioning that. And I learned that, getting that nature, even if there's a little bit of nature there in your buildings, it will change the way you feel. When people are recovering, they are in healthcare facilities, you give them a beautiful courtyard, you give them a beautiful tree, birds chirping, it will really help them to heal faster. They say that students perform better when they're connected to nature. Employees perform better when you have natural daylight. And I will give you an example. The office that I showed you, we shifted in 2017. Earlier, we had an office where, we had 2 floors, ground floor and basement. And we really realized that people who were sitting in the basement, their performances, their health, their whole well-being was very different than the people who were sitting in the ground floor. When we moved to this office, which had natural light and all, there's a total change in the behavior pattern, the productivity, the zeal of the people who are working with me. There's a total dramatic change that I see. So of course, it's all a play of natural. It's all about nature and natural. So this is what I was mentioning. If nature is so beautifully taking care of that balance and doing it in a very self-sustaining way. Like you have, for example, we talk about flood plains. They get formed and there are beautiful habitat like birds and animals you'll see there. And what it is doing, it's also filtering the water. It is taking care of when there's flooding. If you don't have these flood plains, they will obviously lead to flooding. And that's what's happening today. We've destroyed all of it. We've destroyed the flood plain. That is why we face the problems of the flood today. So what nature builds is self-sustaining. We have to understand and draw our aspirations through it, whether it's the patterns, the colors, the biodiversity. And we all know that we love to go and sit near it to draw that aspiration. We love to be near nature as much as possible. So why keep it away? So I feel that the main learning has been that we design all our urban environment with respect to nature and engaging it. Why walk a kilometer or 2 kilometers or 3 kilometers to a park or drive to that? Why not have it just outside our house? So that we felt was very important. This is a very beautiful example. The picture that you see below, this is actually in Seoul, and what happened was, and it is a beautiful example of when I talk about sustainability, balancing the social, economic, and environmental parts of it. How they did that. This was basically a dirty nala which was passing through, and the place, so earlier it was to be a stream, and then later people converted into a nala. So all the dump was going into it. And what happened was the spaces, all these shops and things kind of closed down after a while. No one wanted to really stay here. The prices of the apartments really dropped down in this place. So the society, the people nearby went up to the government and they took that initiative. And now, you see they have the river stream clean running past it. The people have started visiting in. There are a lot of shops and restaurants which have opened around it. So they balance the environment with the economical factor. Automatically, the prices of this place shooted up. So it helped revive the social, it helped revive the economical part, it helped revive the environmental part. So if these kind of things you can take up, it's going to be, I would say, helpful for the entire community. Then this talks about, and we have actually implemented in one of our housing projects, that we make stormwater lines, we make sewer water lines, and we put so many pipes, we push manholes, and we try to drain that water somewhere else. So much energy gets wasted, so much land gets wasted in that. So instead of that, what we did in one of the projects, we used actually bioswales, which use very hardy species of plants, which help to retain water for the longest time. And then we did not have, we did away with the stormwater lines completely. So from the building towers, only up to the, just the bioswale, we would take a pipe and we would just run it. And the bioswale would take care of the complete drainage of the water without relying on those things. And this place never gets flooded. It is beautifully done. So, and then we connected all these landscape areas within that housing sector. So it took care of the environment. It was done economically. And of course, it took care of the social aspect, because it becomes a lovely space for people to actually enjoy. This is Atlanta Beltline. What they have done is that they had fragmented villages all across, spread across Atlanta. And then they had a railroad line which was lying abandoned for the longest time. So the rightmost image that you see is actually an abandoned railway line. They revived the complete project. What they did was they interconnected the villages through these walkways and a tram which runs. And then all these were gardens, a lot of shops which they're opening up right across. So the community got connected. Nobody now is, people try to minimize the use of car. They actually walk this path because it's safe, it's lovely, it's effective for the health. So again, environment, social, and economical. So all three components, can help revive. So interconnectedness within the communities through nature becomes important, and it helps for the communities to, interact with each other. They help to foster a sense of community spirit, and people feel responsible. They feel that, these spaces are important for them. So you would be wondering why I'm talking about all of this when, the main topic was Shunya. Because again, I said that, just making a building energy efficient or water efficient is not enough. It is the integrated approach. That's what Shunya talks about. So all the projects we have tried to, number one, look at the climatology, where we are placing the building. How is it facing the sun? What is the best direction to put your glazing windows? What is the best way to manage the window wall ratio? Of course, so these are the energy aspects. How well we can, make use of materials which are recyclable. How can we install materials so that they become recyclable? How do we manage that, the heat inside the building is minimum so that you use less air conditioning systems? So this is the energy part of it. In terms of water, of course, you conserve water. But more importantly, how do you build that social spaces? How do you make people feel that, they're taken care of? How do you feel that make people feel connected to nature, which we felt was very important. So connection to environment, connection to nature, that's how you will start caring. If you go to your office every day, just get off a car, go into your building and come back, what's the fun of it? I mean, it's you become like a robot, nothing else. But yes, if you go to your office, you walk across nature, or maybe you can walk to your office and surrounded by beautiful greenery, birds chirping, it just changes your complete mindset. It helps to de-stress. So that's the kind of concept we try to bring in all our projects. So this is the project which was at one point of time one of the 10 largest LEED platinum, US LEED platinum in the world. And this was in core and shell category. So it was more difficult to achieve because we were not controlling the interiors as such. And then what we did was that actually this side is north on the right side. all the buildings we oriented north-south. So here, this is a ground floor where you see the building tilted the other way, but actually there are 3 buildings, 1, 2, and 3. And all of them get staggered, from this side. So that's the main entrance. And these buildings are staggered. The reason they are staggered is that each of the building gets its own identity. That was a requirement from, of course, this was core and shell, and it was to be tenanted. So the tenants wanted that their building should be visible from the outside. But more importantly, what we did was that this zone that you see, this is a completely stilted zone, which is a ground floor and double height space on the ground floor. And it also has a sunken court. The intent was that, people actually walk through this space in the mornings and in the evening and enter from here, enter the building blocks from here. So these are, you enter from this side rather than from outside. And then we created, put water bodies along the wind direction. So we noticed that, the wind direction is this way from this side, from the road side to this inside. So we put water bodies that would cool the wind before they enter this courtyard, this shaded space. And in addition, because these buildings were shading this area from top, this became a beautiful social space. So we took care of the environment, we took care of the social, and of course, this complete project was done in a very economical way. It was one of the, we really, I'll explain you how we could manage the economics of it, because how we kind of reused a lot of materials and how we kind of struggle to get a LEED Platinum while keeping the economic in place. But what I really wanted to tell you, and we call this area a nature's walk. So I'll go to the images. So this is how the wind flows. It gets cool along the way, and it really so even if you go in peak of June or peak of July, you'll find people sitting here and enjoying this space, which is outdoor. So this project did get a lot of awards because it was done in a very economical way. It took care of all the social aspects of the thing. And if you go ever on a Friday, you'll see that, there are musicians playing here, there are people sitting around. So that's how the quality of space has actually become. It's done in a very simple way because, like I said, we were very tight on the budget. This is the north facade. So you see, it's not that we have complete glaze system. Only on the north side, we gave more glazing because the sun always travels from east to west via south. So north typically would never have a direct sunlight. So we could use a lower performance glass on the north side to save cost. And the south and the west side had a higher performance glass. And our intent was that the south and the west had a very, I would say lesser glass than the north side. The complete perimeter of the building has insulation on the south and west side. East side we've used, because of course economics had to be looked at. We had single single AAC block, because AAC blocks also helps in the thermal insulation. Now we didn't have the budget, so we really debated, when we did energy simulation, complete simulation models, and we saw that, if we were to use a double wall all along, that would cost us like 2 to 3 crores extra. So we didn't have the budget. So what we did the simulation and saw that the saving in terms of energy was just about 0.5%. That was not so the money was not really kind of helping us out. So instead we used solar panels on the rooftop, which were costing far less and giving us the same amount of energy saving. So we did a lot of these simulation to understand, what would be the best way forward to do the whole thing in economic way and yet achieve our environmental goals. So that's a section which shows you that the complete ground floor is a public realm. Public realm would be a public space, basically. We have gym and the cafeteria, which sits in the lower ground. Now, lower ground is surrounded by earth, so keeps the entire space much cooler than the higher spaces. And if you look at the footplate of the building, the offices is such that it is not more than 18 meters to help to harness the sunlight from both the sides. So that way you can have completely daylit areas without relying too much on the artificial lights. Artificial lights are only switched on during the evening. And one more thing, what we kind of give a tenant guidelines to the people was that the perimeter will have perimeter lights will be on a certain circuit, so that, and it will be linked to the daylight sensor. So they can be off throughout, maybe till about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the summer, while the lights which are in the interior spaces are on a certain different circuit. So this is what we call nature's walk. So you actually walk through it, you hear the birds chirping, you see there's a little waterfall, water body there. It really helps to kind of lift your spirit before you go into your offices. So in fact, it's a very funny incident. National Geographic went and interviewed people. So there were two people who said, we come to office half an hour early because we like to really unwind. And a lot of times you get scoldings in the morning from our wives. We just come, unwind ourselves, and then actually go into our offices. Even in the evenings, we love to sit here because it's a beautiful environment, a beautiful social space. They've made good friends there. So these are simulation models which actually told us, which side we should shade, how the buildings, you see how the buildings are shading each other. You see these shaded area. So the way the buildings orient make a lot of difference, because you can save so much of energy coming into the buildings just by the way you shade. So this is again, of course, the inspiration from our designs of the past, of our, how our ancestors used to really do that. So these are some more images of the place. So in terms of energy performance, we were able to actually save 45% energy over a standard building, our neighborhood buildings, and 20% over a ASHRAE defined base case for this project. Now, this is another project, Patni Computers. You see a very heavily shaded facade. We won this as a competition, and the only directive by Mr. Patni was that you give me a building which my people will not put any blinds, because what happens is architects design, they put all glass, and after that people put blinds and they switch on the light. So what's the point? So we actually got down to it, did computer simulations, tried various means, and actually delivered a building where people absolutely put no blinds. He was very happy, and then he gave us a building across to do. And this is in former stepped well courtyards. So that's how the building is. It's got two courtyards like this. The building footprint is only 15 meters, capturing light from both sides. We have a water body with a jali. So then what happens is through evaporative cooling as well as Venturi effect, you're able to cool this courtyard. So people use this area as an outdoor space from the cafeteria. We have the cafeteria on the ground floor. So these are the images which show how, the courtyard is kept quite cool. These are simulation models which show that, the complete building is very nicely, naturally lit. These are some more images. And then here, what we did was we were pre-cooling the fresh air before it actually entered the building. So, and then we were also using the complete system on a complete fresh air mode. Like you were not switching on the ACs for in some fair weather seasons like November, October, February, March, where actually the outside temperature is much lower. But what happens is because inside you have lights on, you have heat from the equipment, heat from the people. So you actually need air conditioning. You will see most of the offices run air conditioning in these weathers also. But we didn't do it. We were just pumping in fresh air from outside. And then second thing, what we were doing, as I mentioned, was pre-cooling the fresh air. So we had a heat recovery wheel, which would take the coolness, which would cool the outside fresh air which was coming in, instead of pumping in fresh air to every AHU separately and cooling it, which would require much more energy. We were doing it at the rooftop and then supplying to the various floors. So here we were able to achieve actually 36% energy saving, and then over the other projects. So we realized that, every project we were trying to do a little bit better than what we had done before. The aim was to get to net zero. This is another corporate office where we did the facade renovation. This is how it existed when it came to us on the drawing board. So this is an existing building where we renovated the complete facade, but the intent was not the facade. The intent was also to give them enough social and interactive spaces. They had a nice garden, but was not used because they had put glazing. Ground floor was all offices, and they had blocked the complete facade. So first and foremost, what we did was that you see this garden here. First and foremost, what we did was they had a cafeteria on the rooftop. We got it on the ground floor. So that ground floor, we could open the glazing and actually come out, and people could use this garden to sit, to enhance the interactive spaces. This was their atrium, which had a lot of sunlight coming in, a lot of glare, but not actually useful. So this basically tries to explain that, when you surveys tell us that at least 29 to 30% of companies are considering mobile work strategy for more flexible options to increase the employee productivity. So these are the layouts, how we, in the central area, we have given a lot of flexible spaces because not everybody wants to work on workstations all the time. So you give them, areas they can just chill, work. So it's more flexibility. In terms of the facade, these were again some simulation models which we did, and we saw that mainly the buildings faced north. But the way they had done the glazing, they had almost 50% area covered with glazing, but the interiors were very dark. So we got down to reducing the amount of glass in the building, but giving it strategically and at places where it really matters. So we put it where the workstations were and blocked the spaces which were staircases and other areas, toilets and all. We blocked the complete glazing there and only gave window enough so that there was it would light up the toilets and the staircases. We pushed, these were the fins which we did, but the cost of the fins actually required was, the depth of the fin required was actually 750 to actually, shade completely. Otherwise, we were getting sunlight only for 1.5 hours. So we thought there's no point in, spending that cost because we are Indians, we are cost conscious. So there was no point, in giving such deep fins. In fact, what we did, we pushed the workstations away from the perimeter and gave all the breakout spaces there. So how it helped really was that you didn't really have to spend so much more money in giving those fins. And at that time, you did need breakout spaces, which could come at the perimeter, and people would not use it for 1 hour, 1.5 hours in the day. So this is how the external facade now looks like. So there is glass, definitely, but it's limited to this area. These are the fins which are playfully done. They completely take out the glare from the sun, but they get in all the natural daylight. These are the outdoor sitting spaces. This is a very initial picture taken when, things were just being executed. So these are the trees. We didn't even cut one tree. We retained all the trees. This is the western side, which is, if you see, there's more of stone and solid facade because west has too much harsh sun which is coming in. So we did need to do some glazing, but that's all shaded by these jalis. These are all jalis which are there. This is the courtyard now, how it looks like, completely glare-free. They had walls around. So we didn't really understand why they gave the courtyard when they had to put all solid walls around. So we broke that, created all the breakout zones here and, common facilities in this area. So it's a pleasure when you, actually transiting from one wing of the building to the other. It's a nice place to actually, sit across. These are all LED lights, and we really brought down the LPD, which was actually 1.8 watts per meter square to actually 0.5 watts per, square meter. So we really got that. We introduced this that you see near the glazing. Now this helps to harness the natural light deep into the workspaces. Normally your light would travel about, anything between 12 to 15 feet, but this allows the light to travel almost 20 feet by way of reflection. So it has got a reflective surface just above this light shelf. And then we also have glazing going all the way up to 2.7 to 3 meters, getting light more inside deeper into the workspaces. So these were all high performance building. So you see that, this is the energy requirement of a typical high performance building. Then we made platinum building, we lowered. So you see our energy requirement of the building, we are going on reducing. So let's say if my first building required, for instance, 20 watts per square feet, my next building intent was to make it 15 by shading the building, by reducing the window wall ratio, by using a better performance glass. But we wanted to achieve better. We wanted that, true sense, our footprint, our true efforts will be there when we actually give back to the planet. So for that, we had to go net zero at least, and then next step would be net positive. So for that, we had to reduce our energy consumption of the building to the bare minimum. And how we did that? So how do you really define a net zero energy building? It's a building which will produce as much energy as it uses over a course of a year. So for example, I put solar panels. Now let's say my building in the summers needs 6 kilowatt or 6 watts per square feet. But in the winters, it will require less. Now, if I was to put solar panels, which are 6 watt per square feet, I would need more surface area. I would need more expense. I would need more finances for that. So we don't do that. What we do is we average out. We say, okay, what's the average requirement throughout the year? And then we give solar panels according to that. So in the summers, it will take from the grid, from the municipal grid, and in the winters, it will supply. So on an average, it becomes net zero. So that was the intent when we put up Shunya. And this is the Shunya house, which is made completely out of waste. We took, containers, so shipping containers, which were lying waste. We took 4 of them, and we realized for a Delhi composite climate, it works fantastic when you have a courtyard. So there are 4 containers actually, which form a courtyard in between. And the 2 containers which are on the left, in the center, which is this container here and this container, they are pushed out to form a courtyard, and then they form verandas. So just outside, so your shading is important, window wall ratio is important. And this is the south side, this container actually faces the south. That's why we have the solar panels also here, which face the south to harness the sun energy. And at the same time, this container, if you see, has a minimum window sizing here. We have like larger windows on the north side and smaller windows here. So step 1 was, of course, you see what I was explaining. These are 4 containers. They are, we put the cuttings in the containers as we required. We put them together. This becomes a courtyard. And then we put truss over it, and we put roof, and then insulated the roof, of course. And then we put the solar panels in it. So this all was done in, the complete end-to-end product was done in 25 days. So that's how this, the step-by-step approach was. So if you look at the containers now, that's the first container here. You enter from this front deck, that's the entrance lobby. We have a small kitchen, we have a toilet, and then you enter the living room. So this is the second container actually, which forms, half part of it forms a veranda on this side, on the right side, which is your east side. Then this is the living room. This area becomes a study lounge. It faces north, and there's a lot of indirect light from the north which actually comes in. You see there are larger windows on the north side. And then you come into this bedroom, which again faces the north. It does have a veranda, which is nicely shaded by the 3rd container, and that's the 4th container. And there's a beautiful courtyard which forms in between. There, of course, the front 2 sides also has some decks which we gave. So that's how the 3D view of it is. So now how do you make it net zero? So you found 4 containers, but you want to make it net zero. It's a small house. It was, I think, 800 square feet house. So we realized that, electrical load for this particular container, now you'll keep noticing, this table, I'll show you step-by-step approach. You keep noticing these numbers here. This is 8,562 kilowatt hour. Cooling load is 2 tons. So you actually need 2 tons to cool this 800 square feet of the house. Carbon emissions is 7.6. Now, the first approach is that you orient it right. Like I've been explaining, the best way is orienting north-south for our climate, Delhi climate. Of course, you have to see where the building is placed, and, side by side things would change. But north-south would be I'd say for this particular climate, it's the best way to orient it. So electrical load, you see from 8562 dropped down. We saved about 2% of energy. Our cooling load also dropped down. The carbon emissions dropped down, right? Then the next step we did, we said, okay, let's insulate the roof. We insulated the roof, and we found that, you see that from the conventional, again, we saw there was a 4.5% energy saving. Next, we went on to wall insulation. We did about 6 inches of wall insulation. So it was actually a 6.5% saving. Total saving is about 11%. The loads have come down, the cooling load has come down, and so did the carbon emissions. Then from single glazing, we went to double glazing. We saved another 4%. Next was window wall ratio. For most of our projects, they have played a significant role. So while you daylight the complete house, you ensure that you put it rightly, because putting the windows rightly is correct. Because I've seen so many buildings where they would put large amount of glazing in the toilets, but you really don't need it. You need it where you're actually working or living. So that's 4.5% by just making a double insulated glass. Then we looked at internal spaces, that we ensured that at least 75 to 80% of the areas are naturally lit. So you don't need to put the artificial lights. Then you went on to daylight controls, because a lot of times you will see people just leave the lights open. They would not switch them off. So if you put daylight sensors in areas like your toilets and kitchens, they would just go, if there's no one there, it'll just switch off, right? So even your stores for that matter, HU rooms, there's so many places where you can put. So when we've introduced daylight sensor and occupancy sensor, we saved another 6% of electricity. Then next was the shading devices, how you nicely shade the windows. That brought down the cooling load from 2 tons to 1.5 tons. From conventional loads from 8562 to about 6798, 30% saving right away. And then we looked at the function of the courtyard. We have introduced a water body in the courtyard, which helped us to, helps in terms of evaporative cooling, increases your thermal comfort, reduces the amount of heat which is coming into the building. And then we also introduced these louvers on top of the courtyard, which will again, not allow direct sunlight to come in. So then natural ventilation, we had, you place the windows in the right direction, the size of the opening matters. When we did all of that, we realized we saved another 9%. And then there was solar AC we introduced, because now we only needed, if you see, 0.8 tons of air conditioning. That was by a solar AC. It is a hybrid air conditioner. That got us 20% saving. Cumulative savings, if you notice, is 60%. So just by these small measures, you see, and very easy methods, there's no rocket science, such simple things which we can all do in our own houses. You could cut off 60% of energy of that house. And then we got energy efficient equipments. You've all seen these advertisements where they say that they are be 5-star rated. Your televisions, your fridge. I know their initial cost is a little higher, but you see, you recover that cost in not even 1 year. Sometimes even 6 months to 1 year, you recover that cost. That initial investment actually helps not only you, but it helps the environment. So by these passive means when you are not using any air conditioners or anything, you just by simple orientation, natural ventilation, you're able to save a lot of energy. But here we use both passive and active to really reduce the amount of percentage in terms of the savings we could do. So now, let's say initially the building required 8 kilowatt or 9 kilowatt. We just needed 3 kilowatt capacity of the solar PVs. And our surface area of the roof actually was enough to put them. Otherwise, if we were going by the original standard means, we would be spending more money and we didn't have the surface area to actually take care of it. So then this house actually became net zero. We ran it for 1.5-2 years to actually see, is it effective? It was a research and development project. It was put up for an exhibition. We could easily disassemble and take it to another site where they actually ran it and so. And then it was very successful. And that's how, we now doing many more projects where actually we're using this complete system. But then I mentioned that, Shunya was not all anyway just about saving the energy. Shunya in terms of food, Shunya in terms of water, recycle your water, not a single 0 drop of water going out of your site. So you use, you harness that every droplet of water that comes to your site that was being reused. Food was being grown in the same, garden there. We were using the kitchen. I mean, once it's cooked, the organic waste was used to make manure. The food was being cooked in the solar cooker. So it is a closed loop recycling, all zero, no waste going out of this project. 0 water, 0 waste, and 0 energy is what we looked at. We had a roof which had vegetation, which would not only help in insulation, but also tapping in water. So that's how the entire thing is, the vegetable gardens. Green roof, of course, not only help in terms of enhancing your biodiversity, it also helps in insulation. So that's how the few pictures of the Shunya is. This is all recycled doors, recycled furniture, which is put here. This is a courtyard which gets in ventilation to the house. These are some more images, the vegetable garden, composting pit you see on the right side, solar lights all across, solar cooker all across. Now, this is a project in Kolkata, which is again the same principle. We looked at the wind, solar energy. We looked at how the complete, so this is for a solar panel manufacturer itself. So we are covering the entire facade with the solar panels. So you have a building integrated photovoltaics on the north side. South side is the solar panels. Roof also has solar panels. But first and foremost, the main aim was to reduce the energy consumption of this building to the bare minimum, like what we did in Shunya. By how we achieved, of course, window wall ratios, type of glass that you're using, how you're orienting the building, how you're making people sit, so that, you know, we had open workstations on the north side and cabins on the south side, because cabins can, you know, you can do with smaller windows, sleek windows, but people who are sitting in larger density would need more views and of course more light. So that's the south side where actually the people sit. But more than that, what we did here was, this is a marshy land and there was a canal which was passing by. So we took permissions from the government and we, you know, cleaned up the canal, and we actually created a social space for the people outside. And this became like an extended landscape for us, what we call as borrowed landscape, because the site was very tight for us. So we actually opened it up by using these spaces. This entire sit out is made out of solar panels. I mean, shaded by solar panels, so people who are sitting outside can be comfortable. So that's how the section is, that we have public zone here. This is the canal, which you know, becomes part of the borrowed landscape for the project. These are open offices with, you know, open terraces in between, and that's the senior management with rooftop garden, all covered with solar panels. I'm sorry. These are the, you know, how we did the building simulation to understand which facade will actually use what kind of solar panels. So these were some rooftop panels which were used. The total EPI of the energy performance index of the project. So it required 67.3 kilowatt hour per square meter. And that's how the complete building facade was modeled to supply that. In the end, I would like to say, you know, when you have sustainable infrastructure, it will facilitate a place, a region, a society towards goal of sustainable living. But that will not just come from the top level. Every house, every building, every office has to be done very consciously, very sensitively for the climate, for the people, integrating all that. So you balance the social, economic, and the environment factors. And when it comes from top down, you know, top up approach, like you start from every house, every this thing, every office, the entire region, the entire community, the entire society will turn green, and people will be more conscious of it. It will improve the quality of life for all of us. So I do envision India as a zero energy society with zero utility bills, zero water, zero waste, minimum carbon footprint, an earth-friendly society. And it all has to come from all of you working towards it, a net positive India. And I envision Shunya, you know, for the development, well-being for every one of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheetal ma'am. It was a very interesting talk. And after this expert talk, now we know how we can connect building with nature. And I just loved the concept of Shunya building. It was very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheetal. That was very enlightening, very enriching. Thank you. And
Thank you.
simply put, that's what I loved about it. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Palak, you will take the Q&A.
Yes, ma'am, I'll take it.
And I just wanted to apologize to Mr. Malik. It slipped my mind that time to, you know, hand over to him. So I apologize if he's still, I believe he's not too well. Thank you to him for joining today.
So now we'll go ahead and take some questions. So what are the major challenges that we face in designing a green building?
I think initially there were more challenges were there because, you know, the first challenge was that everybody thought that, you know, it's going to cost more. So convincing people, yes, there are certain items which require an initial investment, but the payback periods are, we've realized, less than 6 months. And in today's day and age, you know, over the years, the prices and all have become very competitive. So you really don't spend anything extra in just designing right. So challenges, you know, have been dropping down. I would say initially there used to be. Now I think it's just a matter of convincing people, your clients.
We have another question from Vijayant. He wants to know that he understands green building are the need of hour, but how we can promote green buildings when people cannot afford informal settlements. So he just wants to know that how we can convince people to go for green buildings.
You know, when you're talking about even the smallest of houses, you know, where the cost and all are low, just natural ventilation. And like I mentioned, there's no additional cost to it, because if you just orient it right, if you just naturally ventilate it and design as per the environment and, you know, balancing all of that, there is no absolutely, I would say, additional cost which is required. When you're looking at office buildings, yes, you're putting a high performance glass, but you see that you're saving at the same times on your equipment loads, because your chiller capacities, your DG capacities would come down. So it's not really costing anything extra. And of course, you will not need all of that for a informal setup or a house, which is, you know, if it's just nicely ventilated and it has there are different materials which are available to make a house. You don't need to use a high-end material. You can use it with a low, you know, with a low-cost material, but just insulating it, whatever is the best cost-effective insulation. You know, मटके से भी तो करते हैं हम, जो छत को करते हैं गांव में, वहाँ तो वो मटकों से करते हैं, उससे भी अच्छी insulation हो जाती है. So it's just the architect, how he leads the way forward.
So another question from Harsh, he wants to know, where can I find more information about the components of green building, like energy efficiency or reduced waste?
So there is a IGBC website where you know, all these books and all are available, and they can be made available of, or otherwise you can check with IGBC. I mean, they can courier the books to you. So all that is, the data is readily available.
Shiv wants to know, can I get the score sheet of for Shun? Is there any analysis sheet or something for Shun?
What exactly do you need? Because we didn't apply for a IGBC rating for that. But yes, if you need, what we can do is, you know, the data in terms of which was already part of my presentation, that how insulation and everything, you know, helped us to reduce percentage wise. All that data can be made available. We can mail it to him.
Okay, so I think there is one electrical engineer here also. So he wants to know, what is the role of electrical engineer in conversion of old buildings to green buildings?
Old buildings to new buildings. Of course, if you, one is that using energy efficient equipments, you know, that you can specify the kind of wiring which helps to, you know, helps in terms of the efficiency of the electrical thing. In terms of the lighting, how we can achieve the same lux level with more energy efficient lighting. So that's, and you know, how you do the looping, how you can do, like I mentioned, the daylight sensors, occupancy sensors, all that an electrical engineer can really help with, right? And we don't put unnecessary lights. We do the circuiting right, so that there's not much, you know, wastages.
So I think many people want to know about the cost of the building. How does these cost matters? So the question is, what will be the cost of building these types of building like Shunya houses?
See, Shunya was more of an experiment project where lot of these companies, whether it was the glass vendor, whether it was a solar panel, they gave everything at a subsidized cost because, you know, it was a research and development project. But then if you need for Shunya, that costing will still have to be, you know, will have to be taken out. I would say that, you know, because it's mainly the solar panels investment that will be required. If you're anyway doing if you're doing a building which is as per the latest ECBC norms, you will comply. Not just making it like for energy efficient buildings, anyway you have to follow the norms, right? ECBC and all. If you do that, there's no additional cost to it. From there, if you have to make zero energy building, yes, the investment will be there, because you will be you know, you will be using solar panels, you'll be using much thicker insulation than what you're doing, but that will pay you off, right? So that has to be calculated. It's very difficult to put a cost like this. It has to be calculated project to project.
So this question is from the case study that you have shown us. So Mohammad Uwais wants to know, while ago you said that you have supplied fresh air directly from treated fresh air unit installed at the terrace of your office area.
Right.
So how is it possible? fresh air from TFA will be supplied to floor AHU, then to the individual AHU, or directly?
No. So what we were doing is we only had a heat recovery wheel which is sitting on the rooftop. We were taking the exhaust from the building, which is the toilet exhaust which we're doing. We were not kind of making the airs meet, but we were just cooling the air, the fresh air which was coming in, taking the coolness from the return air. We were just getting it, the coolness was getting transferred from the heat recovery wheel before it was supplied to the individual HU of every floor. So there was a shaft which had a duct which was taking the fresh air from top and supplying to every HU once it got cooled down.
Okay. There is one other question from Shraddha. She wants to know what are the differences between renewable energy and energy efficiency technologies?
So renewable energy is your energy which is basically using wind, solar, solar panels. These are all renewable energies because you're not, these are all sources which are not like you're not using coal you're not using coal or anything which gets depleted. Solar energy is something which is like available. It's not getting depleted at all, right? So that is something which we call as a renewable energy. When you talk of energy efficient equipments, it's a totally different thing. I mean, energy efficient equipment can be any chiller. It can be which is energy efficient. It can be any light which is energy efficient. So that's not necessarily using renewable energy in its functioning, right? It is just helping to lower the energy consumption. Let's say if you take a regular chiller and it is using an electrical load of 1 kilowatt, let's say an energy efficient equipment or an AC would use at least 20, 30, 50% lesser electrical energy, right? Now, whether that electrical energy is being supplied through a renewable source or your regular source is it depends, from project to project, but it's not necessary that it's going to be using a renewable energy.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Actually, we have many more questions, but we are running out of time. So we'll stop here and we'll answer the questions on the link which is given to you guys. And now I would like to request Sandeep Narang sir to please come up and say a few words.
The questions, if I may just jump in here, the questions will all be posted on our website. So whatever questions you have already put, we will take replies from our speakers and have them posted, and the link of all sessions will be there. The chat box has the website name. It's www.premjainmemorialtrust.com. So feel free to write to us. There will be many more questions available on the site. So I hope nobody will be disappointed today. Sandeep, are you here?
Yes, he's here.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes,
Hello.
you are.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, I'm not in my office. I'm at my project site. I'm sorry for that. So, I would like all the students who have participated in good numbers over here. Start thanking my thank you note with the students, and they are the future, and that's where the heart of Dr. Prem C. Jain was, and they are the important stakeholders of our Green Bharat, as we say. So I'd like to thank Axis management of Axis colleges. Dr. Malik, he has been very big supporter of green knowledge for students. Thank Prem Jain Memorial Trust and the management and all the members who have been working very hard for this event. And I would like to thank Palak Patel ji, Payal Jain ji, and above all Sheetal Rakheja ji for the wonderful presentation. Thank you everyone.
Dr. Malik, we wish you good health. We hope you recover soon. I apologize for the initial, and thank you for being here. Thank you. Thank you, Sheetal. Thank you, Palak. Thank you, everybody. Wonderful.
Thank you, Payal, for conducting this. I think it's been a great session. Thank you all the participants for being here and patiently listening to the presentation.
Thank you, Payalji, and hope for future assignments also.
I look forward to that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks. We've got the Q&As, Yatin, copied.